All right, so with the Mavs, I know Kev is going to have a fit over this one, just based off of what happened this past weekend with the Mavericks. So when it came to this past weekend with the Mavs, they lost both of their road games. They lost to the Heat earlier in the weekend, and then they lost an absolute crusher against the Hawks on Sunday. And that was despite the fact that Kyrie dropped 41 points in Atlanta. And unfortunately for him, he had the game losing foul that set up two game winning free throws for the Hawks. And even though that they lost that game, I was watching the highlights of the final possession. And Luka, man, he took an absolute miracle shot type three and damn near drained it. I mean, it was only off by about 3 or 4 inches. And that would have been the difference between the Mavs winning and the Mavs losing in that specific possession. But when it comes to the Mavs are in a very tricky situation here. They are the 11th seed in the Western Conference. They are currently out of the play-in tournament situation, and they've lost 3 straight games. And in some of these games, man, it's really, really tough to watch them sometimes because, look, when it comes to Luka and Kyrie, there's one thing I will say about them. They are playing up to snuff as far as I see it. Ever since Kyrie's arrived, Kyrie, when it comes to just him specifically and the ability that he puts on the court night in and night out on the offensive side, I can't criticize anything about that. Guy's averaging about 25 to 26 points per game. He's shooting over 50% from the field. And like I said, against the Hawks, he dropped 41 points. And what else are you going to ask more for him? You know, when it comes to Luka, Luka's still scoring at a high clip. And, you know, this is the thing that I think we have to kind of pay attention to with the Mavs. Ever since the Mavs traded for Kyrie, the offensive side of the ball has never been an issue. To me, and this is something that Kevin has talked about ad nauseum for years, is that their defensive presence, especially with their big men, has been essentially non-existent. And honestly, I was just perusing through some of the stats to kind of see where the Mavs are ranked in the NBA. And when it comes to Kevin's assessment of Dallas not having a big, he is correct. When I look at their rebounding stats, they are in last place. The Mavs as a team average 38 rebounds per game. They're the only team in the NBA who averages a rebound total in the 30s. Every other team is 40 and above. And then when it comes to the offensive rebounds, they are essentially dead last in the NBA. And, you know, this is something that I think we have to kind of look with, specifically with the Mavs. When it comes to the Mavs, the fact of the matter is, when you don't have a strong enough center presence, whether that's in your starting rotation or coming off the bench, it's going to leave the team in a situation where you're not going to get a lot of second chance points. And even when it comes to second chance points with the Mavs are top 3, top 5 worst teams in the NBA when it comes to getting second chance points. And then you look at some of these games that the Mavs have been in with the Kyrie trade taking place, they have lost some of these games by one possession. I was looking through their games just in 2023. They have lost 4 games by one possession. There have been some games, I think it's been around probably like 8 or 10 games this year, where they've lost by one possession. And if you were to just factor in, if the Mavs had a more competent big to roll with for the entire season, more than likely, they'd be able to get some of these second chance points. And if you look at some of these point totals that they're getting in some of these games that they're losing by, especially by one possession or maybe even 2, if you get 6, 8 second chance points, there's a good chance that you probably walk away with that win. Either that or you knock down your free throws. And when it comes to the free throw percentage that the Mavs are shooting this year, it's not really an issue. And I know that Kev has talked about the fact that Luka turns the ball over too much. He specifically may turn the ball over, but as a team, the Mavericks are actually one of the best teams in the NBA and not turning the ball over. So I will give the Mavs credit in that regard. They don't make the situation worse by turning the ball over because they only average 11, 12 turnovers per game. You compare that to the rest of the NBA. The worst teams in the NBA are committing 14, 15 turnovers a game. So it could be worse if you're looking at it from the Mavs perspective. But, man, this blame game is something that I've noticed over really the last couple of days with the Mavericks because the possibility of the Mavs missing the play-in tournament entirely is now a real possibility. And when it comes to their next couple of games, they have to step up here because if they don't, there's going to be a lot of blame going around. And I know Kev has focused a lot of his blame towards Jason Kidd with the rotations that he's been running, certain players getting time on the court, and then maybe some other players maybe deserving more time on the court and not getting it. But, man, for me, I look at this as just a team failure. This is essentially a collapse is what we're seeing with Dallas. And I know people can look at multiple different ways on who to blame when it comes to maybe this person, that person. But to me, this is just a cohesive failure. This was a risk that the Mavs were rolling with. And unfortunately for them, granted, they got some more scoring with Kyrie in the fold. But defensively, they have taken a step back. They are giving up 115, 120 points a game sometimes when they're going up against teams. And not only that, they are presented an opportunity to play with one of the best players in the world with Kyrie Irving alongside Luka Doncic, and it has not worked out. They are 7-12 since acquiring Kyrie Irving. And when I look at the situation right now with Dallas, if they fall short and they miss the play-in tournament entirely, it's going to be a very long offseason for Dallas. And honestly, this is going to be a very interesting situation going into this offseason. I'll just leave it at that.